Today, no one will deny the genius of Oscar Wilde. Yet during his own lifetime, he was spurned and humiliated, in spite of the success of much of his work. He was a victim of the society into which he was born. The Victorian middle class, whose sacred institutions of morality Wilde was to infringe, simply had no patience or tolerance for him. The saddest of the tragedies that Wilde was to write could not match the events that were to unfold, and Freemasonry, which did play a significant part during his time at Oxford, was also to reject him and let him down. Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wills Wilde was born in Dublin, Ireland, on the 16th of October 1854, and from a young age showed all the promise of becoming an impressive academic. In 1871, he was admitted into Trinity College, Dublin University, and won the scholarship, which catapulted him directly from Ireland to Magdalen College, Oxford, in October of 1874. He was barely 20 years old. Talent and intellect attract powerful friends, and Oscar Wilde, a brilliant undergraduate by any standards, was befriended by various individuals of consequence who influenced his future in many ways. Amongst them were Walter Pater, John Addington Symonds, and John Ruskin. He was also very likely to have been on friendly terms with Prince Leopold, sixth son of Queen Victoria, and this acquaintance will have encouraged his introduction to Freemasonry. Oscar would have felt on familiar ground when, in February 1875, his colleague, John Edward Courtney Bodley, an undergraduate at Balliol College who had only been initiated the year before, approached him with a view to his joining Apollo University Lodge No. 357. Bodley was much involved with Masonic administration, responsible for several fetes and balls, and was appointed the junior secretary of the Apollo University Lodge, director of ceremonies of the Churchill Lodge, and later became the provincial Grand Secretary for Oxfordshire. On the 16th of February 1875, Oscar was proposed in the Apollo University Lodge by Sinclair Franklin Hood of Magdalen College and seconded by J.E.C. Bodley. The ballot proved in his favour. Being underage, Oscar was initiated by special dispensation on Tuesday the 23rd of February. Because the Oxford and Cambridge University Lodges, Apollo University and Isaac Newton respectively, enjoyed blanket dispensation which is automatically renewed annually to initiate candidates under the age of 21, there are no records in Grand Lodge for dispensation applications for individual candidates. Oscar Wilde's Craft and Rose Choir certificates, together with considerable other memorabilia, were acquired by various individuals in the mid-1900s. When Vivian Holland, Oscar's impoverished son, sadly had to sell off his personal items to survive financially. Oscar took his Freemasonry seriously and was a keen and active participant in lodge affairs. Having been passed to the second degree on the 24th of April and made a Master Mason on the 25th of May, 1875, he joined Churchill Lodge in November of the same year, although he was not present at the meeting in which his membership was announced. He acted as Chamberlain, an office that no longer exists, as well as Raphael, which would have entailed his conducting the candidates in the perambulations during the perfection ceremony. He introduced 4 new members to the order, all from Magdalen College. Oscar Wilde, within the confines of Masonic ambience, was in his element. Unfortunately, the order seems also to have brought out in Oscar his extravagant streak and a tendency to overspend, which did cause him some embarrassment. In November of 1876, he spent a total of £15, 18 shillings and sixpence, a vast amount at the time, to purchase from George Henry Osmond watch and clockmakers various items which included 18-carat gold and ivory studs, a lambskin rose choir apron and collar, a rose choir jewel and sword, and belt, as well as a Masonic leather jewel case, lettered with his initials OFWW. He only paid off £10 on account, and Osmond solicitors, Messrs. Morrell, Peel and Gamlin, sued a year later for the remainder. Whereas Oscar's membership of the Apollo University Lodge ceased in 1878 due to non-payment of dues, his demise from the Churchill Lodge was a more deliberate expulsion. In 1881, the secretary to the lodge decided on an efficiency drive to collect arrears of subscriptions due to the lodge. Amongst the 11 members who were finally excluded in 1883 was Oscar Wilde. Wilde's fate is recorded in the lodge minutes for the 4th of June 1883. Brother Crowder, secretary, proposed, and Brother G.L. Hawkins seconded, that the expulsion from the order of Brother Oscar Wilde be reported to Grand Lodge, he having failed to acknowledge the 3 previous communications forwarded to him. This was carried unanimously. The expulsion from the Churchill Lodge effectively sealed and ended Oscar Wilde's Masonic activities. He had not yet been disgraced by society, and the action taken against him in the Churchill Lodge and the remainder of the orders from which he was finally excluded appear to have been a matter of neglect on his part, rather than deliberate action taken against him. By September of 1880, Oscar Wilde had divested himself from both Roman Catholicism and any overt interest in Freemasonry. Having left Oxford for London in 1878 with the self-proclaimed title of Professor of Aesthetics, he was soon on world tours covering the USA and Canada. The next decade was spent with Wilde balanced on that fine dividing line between what was and what was not morally acceptable to late Victorian London society. At the height of his fame and success, while the importance of being earnest was still being performed in London, Wilde prosecuted the Marquess of Queensberry for criminal libel. The Marquess was the father of Wilde's lover, Lord Alfred Douglas. The libel trial unearthed evidence that caused Wilde to drop his charges and led to his own arrest and trial for gross indecency with men. After 2 more trials, he was convicted and sentenced to 2 years' hard labour, the maximum penalty, and was jailed from 1895 to 1897. In 1895, the Masonic fraternity would have been aware, though unperturbed by Oscar Wilde's sad and tragic circumstances. He had, after all, ceased membership of the last of the Masonic orders in 1879, and had left Freemasonry behind that same year when he went down from Oxford. However, his name was still erased from Masonic records in Oxford. Regulation 11 of the order provides that any member being convicted of felony or crime, whatever its nature, shall be deprived of all Masonic rights and privileges, namely, expelled from the order. Thus, Oscar Wilde's expulsion was in line with this regulation, irrespective of the nature of the act for which the imprisonment was served. On his release from prison in May 1897, Oscar Wilde made his way directly to Dieppe. He was to spend the last 3 years of his life in exile in France. Oscar died in his room at the Hotel d'Alsace on the 30th of November 1900, diagnosed as having suffered from cerebral meningitis. He was 46 years old.